Okay, good afternoon and welcome to AP Economics. It's great to see everybody, and I'm hoping everybody's going to have a great time. Specifically, this semester, we're going to be looking at AP Macroeconomics. And if you would find out that you enjoy economics as much as I do, I think you're going to have a great time this semester. And I always try to tell my students that it's one of the most important subjects you could possibly imagine. And hopefully, as you go through this semester, you'll appreciate why that is. But before we start, it seems like if we're going to talk about economics, it might be a nice idea to actually know what economics is. So, we're going to start with what I think most of you think it's probably about, even though that's not totally true. Many of you, I imagine, think that it's all about money. And it is true, we're going to be spending a lot of time this semester talking about money. But the truth is, there's actually a different word that I want you to think of when you think of economics. And that word is choice. Choice. Well, economics is the study of how people make choices and decisions. Now, that's a kind of an interesting study because if you think about it, we make choices all the time. We make choices when we decide to get up and go to school in the morning and not stay home and watch a movie. We make choices when we decide who we're going to marry. We make choices when we decide if we're going to go left or right on the road. We make choices all the time. And in truth, yes, some of those choices, many of those choices are about money. And so that's kind of how economics and money have gotten linked together. But the truth is, economics really just studies in general how and why we make the choices that we do. Now, why do we have to make choices in the first place? And therefore, why do we have to study economics in the first place? Well, the reason for that is another vocabulary word, and that word is the word scarcity. And scarcity simply is a condition where there are not enough resources to satisfy all wants and needs. In truth, we would never have to study anything to do with economics if we didn't have scarcity, because if there was no scarcity, if there was enough of everything, then we never ever would have to make any choices. And so there would be no reason to study economics. And yes, sometimes, again, we may not have enough money, so we have to make choices. But scarcity can exist in a lot of ways. It could be something as terrible as not having enough water and needing to make choices about what to prioritize, what things to use, what limited resources you might have. These are decisions that we make every day. And the reason we have to make those decisions, the reason we study economics, is because the resources in our world are scarce. There are not enough of them. Now, when we make a decision, we actually have to begin to give things up. And that is a term that we call opportunity cost. And the definition of opportunity cost is very simple. It's the next best thing that is given up when a decision is made. So, for example, I'll go back to my first example. If I decide to go to school, which hopefully all of you are doing every day, and not stay home and watch the movies, then my opportunity cost of going to school is not having a chance to watch a movie that day. It's what you give up when you make a decision. And that's a pretty important concept that we'll be revisiting throughout the course of the semester. When I think of opportunity cost, I often like to think of Rosa Parks. You know, Rosa Parks had a very, very big decision to make. She had to decide, and I'm sure most of you know the famous story, that she was asked as a bus rider to move to the back of the bus because of the color of her skin. And there was only one Rosa Parks. In fact, in this case, she was what was scarce. She couldn't sit at the front of the bus and the back of the bus. She had to choose one or the other. And in making the choice to stay at the front of the bus, she had a pretty tremendous opportunity cost. That opportunity cost was, in this case, her freedom. She was arrested for making that choice, and of course would come on to be a symbol of the civil rights movement. But those choices that we make, they have consequences, they have opportunity cost. And that's a very important concept for us to understand. Having some fun with opportunity cost here. Here's a bunch. So now we'll have some fun with some situations that you might not think are economics, but definitely are. So here's my question. What is scarce in each of these situations, and what is the opportunity cost of making a specific decision? So, for example, you have a test tomorrow that you need to study for, but there is a party at your friend's house tonight. All right, so first, what is scarce? Well, what's scarce in this case is you. There's only one of you. You can't be in both places. And so the opportunity cost of deciding to stay home and study is you don't get to go to your friend's party tonight. Or you might end up at the store and see two shirts that each cost $20 and you want them both, but you only have $20 in your pocket. Again, what's scarce in this situation? Well, what's scarce is money. You don't have enough of it. So you have to make a decision. And the opportunity cost of choosing one shirt would be not getting the other shirt. Here's a situation that you might, again, think is economics, but economists would definitely see this as being part of their world. You see another student being bullied and have to decide whether or not to step in. Well, again, what's scarce here? What's scarce is you. You can't do both. You can't walk away and help the student that's being bullied. Now, obviously, both decisions have opportunity costs. If you decide to walk away, the opportunity cost is that you didn't help the other student and therefore may feel guilty, may feel badly about yourself, may not be very proud of what you did. Having said that, if you decide to step in, there are probably some opportunity costs to that as well. Maybe you'll become the target of the bullying. Maybe that person, the bully, won't be able to resist giving you a bit of trouble afterwards. So in every decision, folks, there's scarcity because there isn't enough of something. Again, in this case, it's you. But in each decision, there's also opportunity cost. There's things that you're giving up. So for a little bit of homework tonight, and don't go too crazy with this, but I want you to think of everyday normal decisions that you're going to make. And then in each of those situations, just stop for a minute and think, why am I making this decision? What is scarce in each situation? And what is your opportunity cost? Now, admittedly, this could possibly drive you a little crazy if you do it too much, but just take a few moments and think about how economics plays a role really in every moment of our life. Okay, there's one more important concept that we need to know before we wrap up this first lesson, and that's the difference between what we call positive statements and normative statements. In economics, we make a lot of assertions and a lot of statements, and there are two different types. The first is what's called a positive statement, and that is a statement that can be proven to be true. So, for example, we can say definitively, the sun is hot. There's no argument about that. We can use thermometers or whatever NASA physicists use to do those sort of things, but we can definitely prove one way or another that the sun is in fact hot. We can also know by using history and the study of our past that Fords were the first mass-produced automobiles. Both are definitely provable or disprovable, and therefore are positive statements. Normative statements are statements that cannot be proven to be true or false necessarily. Generally, I like to think of them as opinions. So, for example, I might say something like, the sun is more awesome than the moon. Well, I think some people might think the moon's pretty cool, some people might think the sun's pretty cool. We can't really actually define which one is more awesome. So we're going to call that a normative statement, an opinion. If I said, for example, Fords are better than Chevys. Well, better's, again, sort of a nebulous term. Are Fords better? Are Chevys better? Some people like Chevys better. Some people like Fords better. It's sort of hard to prove or disprove that statement, and therefore we call them normative statements. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we're studying right now macroeconomics this semester. There are really two major fields of economics: macroeconomics, which again we're studying, and microeconomics, which I hope you either already have or may have a chance to study at the future. The two overlap a little bit, but the basic difference is this, and I thought it's worth mentioning at this point. Think of macro as the entire forest, and think of micro really is one tree in the forest. It's not the perfect analogy, but I think it works pretty well. During the course of this semester, what we're mostly going to be doing is looking at things from a big picture perspective. We're going to look at the entire forest at one time. And in fact, really what we'll be doing for the most part is looking at entire nations' economies, and in some cases even the entire world's economy, as opposed to looking at individuals and individual businesses. That's what micro looks at. So micro looks at one tree in the forest. Macro looks at the whole forest. And speaking of forests, I thought to kind of wrap up economics, we'd end up this first lesson with a little poem. Now, I know a lot of times this semester you're going to be barred down with or weighed down with economic theories and graphs and charts and numbers, and you may not remember that economics really is a beautiful thing. It's really something that I think when you step back and you think about it, it really is a lot more than just reduced down to charts and formulas. And I like to try to remember that by walking away with this poem here, Robert Frost's A Road Not Taken. I'm sure many of you have seen this poem before. But if we think about it, this poem couldn't be more economic if it tried, right? I mean, the poem is about two roads that go different directions, and that going either direction has a consequence, has an opportunity cost. But you can't go both directions because you are scarce. You have to make a choice between going to the left or going to the right. And both of those paths have a consequence, have an opportunity cost. All right, I hope you've enjoyed the first lesson. Go ahead and work on your module activities.